All right, welcome to another episode of Badass Clinician Podcast. Again, I'm Natty. I'm here with my friend Chestin. We're just going to talk all things about running a performance business, performance clinic, and turn it into a legitimate business. Sorry, I get ahead of my words sometimes. Been up pretty early. This is my second pod for the day, so I'm pumped and ready to go. And off
You're on
camera,
fire, man.
I know I'm on fire. Off camera, we were talking about the whole concept of system versus people, right? And I think we had a good discussion yesterday, and I think I was like, we got to save the juice and make sure we talk about this today. So yeah, man. So obviously, when you and I were talking yesterday, we have a couple people that we know that we're working with that's love having great system, and to the point where these are more like a type A kind of people where like they're very detail oriented and they just want to make sure the system is running and the system is everything, to the point where I looked at it as they want more system so that way they can have less people. I'm more of a people. So, and because I'm not as detail oriented, I needed the more system than anything. So
Yep.
let's dive right into it, man. Like, what are your thoughts on that whole notion of system versus people?
Well, I think they go. I think they go hand in hand,
Mhm.
and I think the successful businesses, the ones that are able to scale effectively, have both. But the key is you. And I said this yesterday when we were talking. You can't put good people into a broken system.
Mhm.
You have to have a good system to put people into, and then they can do great things. Because if you just put people into a system that's broken, then they're going to struggle. Like they're not going to know what to do. They're going to be inefficient. There's going to be mistakes. And then you as an owner are constantly having to come in and fix and adjust and put out fires. And really that's not the goal. The goal is to have a system that operates, that is efficient and effective, and you can swap people in and out as needed. We
Mhm.
talked about this a couple of weeks ago. When we were talking about the Detroit Lions and what Dan Campbell has done with up there with that team. And he brought in not just a culture, like that was a big part of it, but they've been successful in those successful franchises, those dynasties, so to speak. The New England Patriots for so many years, the Kansas City Chiefs, that have been the last, several years. They have good systems, and then they go out and they find pieces to plug into those systems to fill certain roles, but they have a clearly set objective and measurables for those people in those systems. And so I don't think, again, you have to have both, especially in this type of business,
Mhm.
because you're interacting with the public. It's a very high trust exchange. People are coming to you with their health. They have
Mhm.
problems, they have injuries, they have pain that they're trying to get out of. And so you have to have good people in place to be able to deliver a good experience, which then creates those brand champions, which then, increases the brand, so to speak. But you still have to start with the foundation of having a good system in place so that those people can operate efficiently and do good things within that system that you've created.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct, because where we are in healthcare is a trust base. Everything we do is trust based, and
Yep.
if you rely too much on the system, it just it's you get that kind of churn kind of effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the anyone first business book is always the E-Myth. I would say,
Yeah.
it's either Rich Dad Poor Dad or the E-Myth, right? Or
Yep.
both. With the E-Myth, what Michael Gerber was able to say was like, yeah, you can have a franchise system where it's turnkey, this and that, but those are low margin, low stake kind of business, right?
Yep.
You can get a high schooler to come flip a burger with a timer so they know exactly when to flip. But when it comes with dealing pain problems and with the price point that we have, is high value, high trust, and therefore you need high touch point. And if you're
Yes.
going to go ahead and automate every single thing, you kind of lose that high trust point, right?
Yeah.
The new thing that I see especially in the city when I was there this morning, is this new, kind of medical space where you go in, you sign in on an iPad, and then they just scan you up and down and you walk out. It's great because it saves time, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also not great because people need to be heard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because there's narrative to what they're going through right now. So
And in
yes,
a lot of cases, they just want to tell their story.
Yeah.
Like they want someone that understands where they're at. And so, yes, while that's good, the efficiency that it creates, there's that missing element of that personal connection that creates that bond that ultimately is what creates great reviews, referrals, brand champions are going to help your business grow.
Yeah. So we take it to the extreme where you're very system dependent, system driven. It's going to make you more efficient, but it's also going to make you lose brand equity,
Yeah.
right? Because great book that everyone should read is Story Brand. It's all about telling about your brand, your story, and all of that stuff.
Yep.
Now, when you go too much into the system, you lose the human touch, the human connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you go too much into the people, and now you're just throwing your staff, your employee into almost like a chaotic, it's kind of like Royal Rumble in WWE
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
people just
Yeah.
like just putting out fires. Then that also doesn't work as well. So I do think you need a little bit of both. And going back to the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff just got a big contract. He got a big contract because he's thrived into that system. Where with
Yep.
the Rams, they didn't think he was able to do it. That's why they brought in Matthew Stafford,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Yep.
same thing as going back to Phil Jackson with a triangle offense, right? It works
Yep.
with Jordan. It works with Kobe. It doesn't work anywhere else. So we do need
Well,
the
it's
people.
because those people bought into the system. Like they
Yep.
bought into the system that was there. And so as a result, they were able to have success. And they went out and found people that fit that system. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, Scottie Pippen, one of the greatest, power forwards, Dennis Rodman, rebounding machine, but then you had like the Luke Kuechly's and the Sam, what was his name? The predecessor to Luke, I apologize. The predecessor to Luke, you know, Steve Kerr, John Pat, like they had people that fit the system,
Mm-hmm.
but it was because Phil Jackson had a very clearly defined system and he knew what people fit those roles. And
Mm-hmm.
he was then able to go out and find those people to fill those roles and do them really well
Yep.
because of the skill set that they had. And so it's the same thing in businesses. Once you have that system defined, now you have the parameters around which to go out and find those people. So as you're looking to hire, like you're not just looking for someone just to come in and just do certain things, but
Mm-hmm.
you have specific actions, objectives, deliverables that you are expecting them to be able to fulfill. And those people, those roles have certain criteria or qualities that they need to have. But you can't know that if you haven't defined and laid out that system to
Mm-hmm.
be able to then understand what it is that you need to put it, the type of person that you need to put into those roles.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we're breaking it down, the system is the scaffolding of your business, right? That's why we create, and that's why we call ourselves the blueprint.
Yep.
Because most of the times when we meet with business owners, clinic owners, is that's what they lack is that foundation, right?
Yes.
And I've been there because when you start a business, you're just trying to stay above water. And then
Yes.
next thing you know, you hire because you have some cash, but then you just realize that I actually don't have a system. This is not, repeatable, right?
Yeah. You
So,
have this big vision of this grand mansion that you're trying to build.
mhm,
You can see the external structure and maybe you can see some of the internal rooms, but you're not accounting for the plumbing, the wiring, the HVAC system, the foundation underneath that house, the roof, the trusses, like all that stuff. Like all you see is, and that's okay, but you have to understand that to build that mansion, to build that big house that you're trying to build, so to speak, all of those details, those little components that go inside are critical to the long-term foundation and ability of that house to stand. And it's
mhm,
the same thing with a business. It's great that you have this big vision, but at some point you have to you have to get into the details about the internal structures, the internal systems that make that possible. Because without that, like you're going to be running around, slapping flex fix on, the leaky pipes or duct taping wires together or, trying to hold the thing together with duct tape and bubble gum. And that's a really hard way to scale and to finally get to that dream vision that you have.
mhm.
If you don't have those internal structures and those internal systems in place.
Well, I mean, dude, that's why we do this in the first place. That's why we have this the strategic growth partnership. Is that the first 90 days when we come in, it's just all about upgrading the vehicle that you're in, right? Like Formula One was just last week, and the driver does not have to worry about the car because they have a whole team
Hmm.
making sure everything in the car is ready to go,
Yep.
right? So we like to look at, again, I myself as a business owner, I like to look at myself as a driver, right? I want to make sure my car is good to go, right? So we
Yeah.
need a system in place for that. Like first 90 days is crucial for us because we're coming in and we're not ripping things apart, but we're just slowly upgrading bits by bit because what's currently working is working for a reason, and we're not going to
Yep.
go and fix everything. We're
Yep.
just going to go tweak what doesn't work to make it better. And then we'll just
Yes.
do it bits by bit because most of the time people think we're coming in, we're just uprooting everything and we're throwing it away. No, we're not doing that. We're actually doing it meticulously, as careful as possible, as detail oriented as possible. And we're doing it by getting buy-in from the team that you have already. Because
Yes.
if we don't have the buy-in from the team and you're not coaching the team, then the culture is not going to support what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So,
Or I would say on the flip side, not just coming in and doing that, but like a lot of agencies that are out there, they just come in and they want to slap a band-aid on a particular issue or problem. And like they want to come in and paint and spackle. But the real issue is behind the walls with the studs or with the electrical or with the plumbing. And so yes, it can look pretty on the surface, but at some point those problems that are lurking behind the walls are going to crop up, and then you're going to have to deal with an even bigger problem, because then you're going to have to come back in and respackle and paint, but you might have to tear out drywall, you might have to move some things around. So it's really one of those where we come in and really start off by doing a deep dive and understanding the business, and again, like you say, what's working, what isn't working. We identify those critical components where we can get results fast by implementing those things. But then over time, over that 90-day window, it's like we're coming in and we're implementing, we're adjusting, we're tweaking, we're putting in the appropriate systems so that you then can go to your people and give them a clear outline of what their expectations and responsibilities are to drive those end results that you're trying to get.
Yeah. Sorry, Cody's joining us here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, honestly, man, if you're looking at if you're looking to hire an agency, right, and let's say they run ads for you, and it works really well, and you can get, whatever, 100 leads a week, let's say that.
Mm-hmm.
Can your current system and your team can actually handle that? I always ask people, like, if it goes really well, what would break down? Because that's what happened, right? When you have, again, sometimes it's one of those things where you be careful what you wish for,
Yep.
right? There's two tragedies in life. Like, first is not getting what you want. The second is get exactly what you
Getting
want.
what you want.
Yep. So when you get what you want and you have, let's say, 100 leads flowing in, how can you actually manage those 100 leads? How can you actually turn them into a raving fan?
Yeah.
And how do you know that your people is able to manage that system so that way it's a high-end touch point and you're getting customer from life and you're not getting bad reviews? Because that's what's going to happen when you turn these things on, and let's say
Yep.
things go the way you want, you're actually going to like lose some of the people. Like I learned this 2 years ago when we grew from 4 people to a team of 14. Right? We didn't have system in place.
Mm-hmm.
We were just burning payroll. I was just telling people like, oh, you know what to do about that? Then go do that. There were no systems for them to follow. There were
Yep.
no accountability. So end of the day, again, going back, Royal Rumble every single day. And to be honest, we ended up not only losing people, we also lose trust at the same time. So I would hate to see other clinic owners going through that just because it's such a valuable lesson. And for each patient that we helped out and we get them good success, those are our brand ambassadors. That's what I would like to call them, because they actually just send us more and more people. So let's take
I would go back and add a second layer to that, because it's not those 100 leads, it's not just those that ultimately convert to a patient, but what about those that don't?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a large majority, I'm sure, of those leads that are probably not going to convert to a patient today, but that doesn't mean that they won't at some point. So what system is there in place to then maximize and ultimately convert, whether it's becoming a patient or whether it's providing a referral or getting the word out about your clinic? What systems are in place to ultimately maximize those leads that you've generated. So getting those leads, converting those to patients, fantastic. That's the ideal scenario, but that doesn't happen all the time. And so is there a system in place? Do people have responsibilities to nurture and work on those leads that don't convert today, so that ultimately you're getting every bit of, every dollar you're spending to generate those leads, you're able to maximize that value and squeeze the maximum amount of revenue out of those leads? Because then again, that just fuels the vehicle. And if you have the proper systems and people in place, then you're able to accelerate your growth even that much faster.
Yeah, and it's funny because if I were to listen to this 2 years ago, I'd be like, all right, well, yeah, I know I need a good system. But the hardest thing is getting the team to buy in, right? Because they need to buy into the system, because as a business owner, you can't go and implement everything. If you
Yep.
are implementing everything, then you don't need those people to work for you in the first place, right? Because you
Yeah.
can just do everything yourself. But then that's never elevate you from a business manager, right? It's always going to keep you stuck there, and you're never going to be a true owner, a true CEO. So if I would talk to myself now from if I were to talk to my younger self 2 years ago, I think the first thing I would implement when it comes to system is retention system, right? Because you have people in the door already. There's little things you can do to actually retain, get people to stay, finish their plan of care. And then once we get those wins, then I can go to my team and say, hey, what are you struggling with right now? Because when we come into any business, that's the first thing we talk to the team.
Yeah.
What are some problems you're dealing with that would make your day more effective, more efficient? And what kind of skill set do you want to learn? This has been a huge theme in my clinic now, is that we want to hire people, but we also want to collaborate with them, right? Because then you get loyalty in the company, which is the number one thing to grow, right? Because a couple things that will stop you from growing is high turnover when it comes to your customer, your patient, and your employees, right?
Yeah.
And reflecting back, we had high turnover when it comes to our, front-facing staff, our patient care coordinator, just because we didn't have
and
a
that's
good
the most
blueprint.
critical. Yeah, that's the most critical. So I think of we both follow Dan Martell. He was the CEO of SaaS Academy, recently stepped down, but he talks about something called his 1-3-1, which is someone has a problem. And so, what's the clear objective? Number one, the one is, what's the clear objective you're trying to achieve? What are 3 possible solutions to achieve that outcome? And then which is the best one? Like it's a very simple, straightforward principle, so to speak. And he does it all the time with his team. And he talks about how he does it with his team. He's the last one that I saw, he cited an example of someone he hired high level, came to him and said, oh, it was they were trying to hire 13 people in a month, I think is what it was. And so his head of HR came to him, he's like, I'm struggling. Like, how am I going to hire 13 people? And Dan's like, I don't know. I hired you. Like, you're the expert. Like, you need to figure out what's your 1-3-1. So he sent the guy off to do that. Now, I share that story to say Dan can do that because he has systems in place. Like, he's able to hire people, good people, to do the job, but he can do that because he has very clear expectations. He has good systems in place. So he's putting good people into good systems that are then producing great results. If he didn't have good people, if he didn't have good systems in place, and that director of HR or whatever was came to him and said, hey, what's the issue? Dan wouldn't be able to say with confidence, well, I don't know, I hired you to figure this out. Like, I know as a business owner, we want to bring people in and let them solve the problems. Like, that's why we're hiring them. We're hiring them to utilize their experience, their expertise, the things that they know how to do to achieve objectives in their area of responsibility. But if those systems aren't in place, as a business owner, how can you have confidence that this person is going to be able to achieve those objectives if the system isn't clearly defined and their specific roles and objectives aren't clearly defined, so that they can then operate within that framework, utilizing their skill sets and their areas of expertise to be able to do that. And so it just highlights the importance of, yes, the goal is to get people to do those things themselves, to remove you from those positions. But the only way you can get there is by having the appropriate systems in place before you put people in those roles.
Yeah. And the 1-3-1, just to remind people who doesn't know this, is, one problem three possible solution and one thing that they're going to take action on, right?
Yep.
So
Actually,
that's like,
one is what's the clear objective?
oh, yep.
Yep. Clear objective, three possible solutions. What's the one best option to pursue?
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's easy to do that if you have a good system that can spot the issue.
Yes.
Right. So honestly,
and
man,
again,
like just
add another layer to that. Yeah.
yeah, just if we're taking this down to like a granular view, is that going back to retention, right? That's where I would fix first. If I go back 2 years from now, 2 years ago, it would be, hey, when people come in for evals, how often are they scheduling out?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then from there, when they're scheduling out, can we give them a clear, defined objective of what they need, what goals they need to hit on the fulfillment side, from the PT side,
Yep.
to keep them going, right? Can they hit, if they're coming twice a week for the next 4 weeks, what are they going to be able to achieve? And then
Yep.
from that, when you schedule them out for the other 4 weeks, what's the next goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're just doing that and you communicate with your team, both the front and the PT, say, hey, we need to see this person's schedule for this much. Here's our objective, right? So you're like, hey, on the low end, we need, when someone coming for an IE, 8 visit. On the high end, 12,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you talk to the PTs like, hey, if they come in for 8 and they come in for 12, what are they going to be able to achieve, right? If they achieve this within this, what's the next goal?
Yep.
Right? On our clinical meeting every single week, we say, hey, where are people at? What are they achieving? And then after they achieve that, what's next for them? And the one clear question we always ask is like, if people were to leave, why would they leave? Right? Which is something we can do right now to literally take advantage of the people that you have. And then once you start building that out, you start mapping out their journey. And then when they get good milestone, you celebrate the milestone with them, either a post on Instagram, a small gift, like we give them a card and all of that stuff. And then at the end, we just say, hey, by the way, do you know anyone that is going through the same injuries? Any one of your friends? We do it to the point now where we have people coming into us like, oh, my friend just tore the ACL.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just gave them your card already.
Yep.
Oh, they're going to reach out to you via Instagram, this and that. And for us, we're like, great. Hey, by the way, can you text that friend? If it's okay, we reach out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now the team understand that's part of the system. When someone mentioned a friend, they get a care package immediately.
Yes.
Right. So when you solve the retention problem, you should have better cash flow coming in. You have better brand loyalty, brand equity, right? And from there, you have more cash that you can reinvest in fixing all the other part of the system. And then you fix the top of the funnel, which is lead nurturing or lead getting.
Yep.
Right? So, and the best part about this whole thing is that you give your team a win, because they have to buy into what you're trying to do. If all I do is come up with campaigns and we don't have any good track record, I'm going to lose trust with my team. It's like a coach coming in and they have like a negative record.
Yeah.
That coach is not credible.
Yep.
Right? So from that end, you got to get some good momentum going. So that way, when you implement new stuff, they're like, all right, at least Natty's know what he's talking about. Or at least he have a clear, defined goal for us. And it's worth my time doing this. Because at the end of the day, going back to our last podcast about, building, franchise dynasty, is people likes to win. People are addicted to winning. And you got to understand what is the win for your team, each and individual, right? How do you get them to do their job, but also collaborating with you to get their job to be even better?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That's internal growth.
Yeah, and I would say, so, our process, kind of the way we approach it is, we start with what's the end objective? What are you trying to accomplish? And then we go all the way back to the beginning. How does that process start? And then we map out that entire journey and identify every single decision point where something could happen, like an invitation, a call to action, a conversation, a call, whatever the case may be. And we identify all of those, and I call them the what happens now scenarios, like what happens now? And based on that decision, okay, great, now what happens? Okay, based on this, okay, great, now what happens? And so we just go through that process and we map out we start with the end, we go to the beginning, we map out every single what happens now. And then once we've defined those, then we dig deeper and we say, okay, what needs to happen at this particular point to reach our end objective, which is that active patient?
Mhm.
to getting them to become an active patient. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, we need to ask this, we need to do this. And so that's where you've mapped out those scripts. Like you have those conversations scripted out. So your team knows what questions to ask, what points to highlight, how to talk about your service and how you help. And then you're able to give your team that script or that resource that helps guide them in that particular step in that process, which ultimately is going to lead towards that active patient. You do the same thing with your fulfillment process. What's the end objective? A patient completes treatment. They've achieved their objective of being completely rehabbed. Well, how does that start? It all starts once they book that plan of care. Okay, great. What are the steps between starting that plan of care and completing that plan of care? And what are all those decision points? What do we need to drill into? What resources, scripts, assets do we need to create? What questions do we need to ask? What things do we need to send or share with the patient? So just like having that mapped out, it gives your team a lot of clarity in terms of how to act in certain situations because they don't have to think about it necessarily. There's already been a framework established, and within that framework, they can utilize their personality, their experience, their skills that they've developed in whatever it is that they're doing to ultimately help achieve that objective. And that gives them confidence because again, they have something to start with, but as over time, they get comfortable with it, using their expertise, they can identify ways to improve it, ways to do, things to send, questions to ask, answers to give, so all those things. But it all starts again with having that vision, that understanding of the internal workings, those systems that need to be in place. And then you're putting your good people into those places to then carry it even further and do an even better job than what you could do yourself.
Mhm. And what I love about when we go and implement the system is that we get to actually identify who's on the team or who's for themselves, right?
Yes.
So this is huge because I'm gonna say this, as a business owner, you get catfish every single day with resume. You get people just telling you things that you want to hear and you just go based on that. But then, don't tell me what you're gonna do, show me what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like just lead with action. And you know, most of the time when I have hard conversation with the owners, is about people that they need to let go, right? Because you can have the world greatest system. If you don't have someone that's on board with the system and not willing to implement
Yeah.
those systems, that's what's going to stop you. For
Yep.
every employee that we parted way with, my business take off,
Yeah.
right? And it's not, and again, it's just because if we are growth oriented and you want to go, to the stratosphere, you do have to let a piece of your rocket go for you to take off. You have to lighten the load. And
Yeah.
we always look at the average, the people that we have in the company. Is that individual raising the average or are they bringing down the average?
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a culture of winners, winners wants to play with people who wants to win.
Yep.
If you have someone that's not able to win at the highest level, you're going to bring people down. People are going to start coming down with that. So, by looking at the system, measuring the matrix, and then giving, objective improvement and feedback for people to do. If they're able to do that and get win and they love it, great. Those are people that's on your team. If
Yep.
they just defensive from the beginning, which I have, and I tell this story all the time where I used to have an employee that refused to log in leads in like a Google sheet and it's just all in the notebook. That notebook is like $50,000 worth of lead, right? Because it was
Yeah.
2 years.
Yep.
And then as soon as we parted ways and we actually got a better person to actually follow up the system, guess what? Now things start getting traction,
Yes.
right? I think the saddest thing about owning a small business is that, again, small business fail within the first 5 years, and then majority of it fail within 10 years. And the reason
Mm-hmm.
being, and again, I reflect on this all the time, is because you just keep grinding. You're on a hamster wheel because you never got traction.
Yeah.
And right, you're just
Yep.
in a perpetual, pain cycle, and you're like you're spiking up like as a business owner, right? Like when you have highs, you have extreme highs. When you have lows, extreme lows. So for me, I'm just trying like, how do I just stay in the middle where I'm okay? I'm not on like a roller coaster all the time,
Yeah.
right? And having the system to identify that, you can then use that system to create scorecard. Scorecard then create accountability, right? Accountability then creates progress.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that, you're spinning your wheels, right? You're just running on a treadmill. You're
Yep.
going nowhere, right?
You're running around with your head cut off, just
Exactly.
trying to put out fires.
Yeah, and I've been to the point where I was jaded with people before, where you got screwed over. You try to do the best. Most people, again, all the people we work with have big hearts. They want to help people, and once you start getting screwed over, you just become jaded by people, and then that's when you have all system people, where like I don't want to have people. I just want to have system that do everything.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, you heavily rely on the technology. If something goes off and the technology stopped working, then your business fail, right?
Hmm.
And the advice I gave to a friend this week was, you want to have good system, so that way people can do their job and you give them a guardrail to do a good job. You want
Yeah.
to have good people in case the system start failing. They can tell you, hey, this is not working.
Yes.
We need to fix this, right? So
Yes.
now you have an open loop feedback system, and that's the best way to communicate. And the issue with any agency approach is it's a one side thing, right? And I've learned this with billing, where we would get a billing report once a month. By the time I get that report by the end of the month, the problem was it's 4 weeks old.
Yeah.
It's too late. There's no real time snapshot. Again,
Yep.
sport analogy. I would like to know the scoreboard as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's why they keep it very prominent where everyone can see it. So you can see
Yeah,
the score of the game in real time.
yeah. One of the best story Dan always talk about is blind archery. Like, are you actually setting up goals? And when you set up goals, do you have the right tool? Can you even see the target, or you're just setting up?
Yeah.
Right? Is this a pipe dream? Like, so stop playing blind archery. All we're trying to do is like, hey, let's set up a target we can actually hit, and to hit that target, let's measure these metrics,
Yep.
and with these metrics, let's educate your team on what
Yep.
these mean and how to hit it. Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I think we talk about growing a business and we talk all the time about, as business owners working on the business, not in the business. And I think one of the most valuable things that any business owner could do, any founder could do, is work on those systems.
yep.
Like, because that becomes ultimately the backbone of your business. That becomes the foundation, the framework, the internal structure that's going to allow you to live in this nice big house,
Mhm.
and not go to sleep at night worrying, which pipe is going to leak, or which, electrical outlet is going to burn the whole place down. You can sleep at night because that you have a solid foundation. You have the internal structure in place to be able to, again, systematically, consistently grow, bring in new patients, add new staff, expand your services, whatever the case may be. But you're able to do that with confidence because of the system that you've put in place. And I think any business owner that feels like they're running around like a chicken with their head cut off, like, that's the best use of your time, would be to get really dialed in on your systems for your business. Like you said, start with the most important, the highest value system to begin with, which in a lot of cases is retention.
Mhm.
Making sure that your patients get good results when they come in, when they choose you as their service provider, because that's going to ultimately feed the engine back on the front end. It's going to produce great results on the back end that you're going to get referrals and brand champions out of. That creates revenue, that creates wins for your team, which creates that momentum. But ultimately, that then feeds back into the front end, because you're able to confidently go out and grow your business, knowing that you can support whatever amount of leads are going to come in, that you're going to be able to do a good job for those people coming through. Your team knows what to do. You know that they're going to deliver great results. They love what they're doing because they're seeing those great results happen. And ultimately, that's how you create that momentum, is by doing that. So again, if you're running around like, you feel like you're always putting out fires, look at your systems. Like,
Mhm.
how dialed into your systems? How confident do you feel in the systems that you have in place to be able to run your business and scale?
Yeah, and the one thing you just said, like working on the business versus in the business, I always think that people are too extreme, where they try to make things black and white when it comes to
Yeah.
running, where we need to be in the gray area, right? So
Yeah. It's not
again,
mutually exclusive.
no.
Yeah.
So I work on both on and in, right? So like I'll write campaign, I'll do all these things. I'm always like having a team meeting to figure out like what can we do better. To me, like that's working on and in. right?
Yeah.
When I'm treating on the data I treat, because I love treating, I'm there in the trenches with the team. So that way I can actually see in real time, how's my team
Hmm.
doing, right?
Yeah.
From, hey, how are they doing on a personal end? Do they look burned out? What do they look like? How are the fulfillment being? Like, how's the vibe,
Yeah.
right? So for me, the issue we've been dealing with is most people are just extreme, right? Like, oh no, I'm only going to work on the business. I'm never going to step foot in. I did that. And
Yeah.
again, it cost me a lot of heartache because I lose touch of what's going on in the business, right? And because, again, if you have good system, you have good people, you're never going to feel like you're going to lose sight of what's going on when it comes to your business, right? So I think you need to be able to ebbs and flow when it comes to working in and on the business. And like
Yeah. I would say the only thing I would say to that is we're ascending that staircase of success that we've talked about before. The goal is to only work on the business.
Mhm.
Like once you get to that clinic CEO status, like the goal is to only work on the business, not in the business.
Mhm.
And that's where not everyone, some people like working in the business. But, as you're thinking about growing this business and building this big brand, like eventually you want to get to that point where you're just working on the business, but it takes a lot of work to get there. And until you get to that point to where you have total confidence in your team and
Mhm.
you feel like you know what's going on without having to be on the floor treating patients, like you're not there yet. And so working in the business is critical to the success of getting there. But you still have to put in the work of being there, of listening to sales calls, of training your team, of training patients, of whatever the case may be, like monitoring the bill. Like you still have to work in the business. But as you're doing that, it's like as you ascend that staircase, it's like your responsibilities in the business are like this, but as you go up, it slowly decreases, and your responsibilities as working on the business over here down at the bottom, it's like this, but as you ascend up, it grows and grows and grows. So
Mhm.
you have to understand where you're at in that staircase of success and realize that you're probably going to be working in the business to a certain extent until you really get to that CEO status.
Mhm.
But getting there again requires systems, it requires people, it requires processes to make sure that things are being done how and when they need to be done. But that's the end goal, is working solely on the business. But it takes a lot to get there
Yeah, I mean,
before you can confidently reach that stage.
exactly. And I think the what's great is people who are good at marketing is able to market that and say, yeah, you can get there in 1 year. Usually it's a 3 year transformation process because you need to have good people that can build good system, right?
Hmm.
Because you need good people to build good system, to spot check them, and then to report. And as you are sending up, what I envision is that when you start and you're running your business, you're narrow focused. You only focus on one thing. As
Yep.
you're setting up, you actually have to be omnipresent when it comes to your vision. You have to widen your perspective so you can be all knowing and all seeing when it comes to your business,
Yep.
right? And and I love that because I get to go in and leverage my team, and I get to go in and have conversation with them of how we can do better. Like I like tomorrow I have a meeting with Julie, and we get to go and listen to some sales call together. I
Yeah.
get to be like, oh, hey, listen, say this instead. Oh, what do you think about that? Oh,
Yep.
when this happened, someone would jump in. Like, so case in point, right? Have a lead coming in. They they know our price. They know the package. Like, hey, we're gonna go in network. And she was like, well, what am I supposed to do now? I say, great. Here's what we're gonna do. We get Danny, our clinic director, who has spoken to the parents and the kids. He's gonna call and say, hey, if you're gonna go in network, here's what I would look for. Give a checklist. By the way,
Yeah.
if you go in network, we have people do that all the time, but they still come see us once a week where we get to quarterback the care and we get to talk to the other PTs. Right? Again, it's all going in being in the gray area. And I
Yep.
love that because now I get talking points to talk to Danny. Danny, you're a clinic director. I need you to help me out with this. Julie needs help with this. Hey, Julie, Danny's going to do this for you, this and that. So now we're working together,
Yep.
right? Because that's the whole point is you want to be, and I say this to my team, like we're small. Therefore, we need to be flexible, right? And that's the leverage that we have against any big company because big company, they're so concrete. you do this, I do this. I don't talk
Yeah.
to you. You don't talk to me. You're not in my department. And that's why there's a disconnect, right?
Yep.
And if you want to have cooperation, integration, and if you want to actually get a better system, you need your team to communicate, because now if my team can't communicate what the sales system does to the PT and the PT doesn't understand it, that means we don't do it's not simple enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
The best thing is I had someone who tried to, big league me in the past, was like, oh no, it's too complex. I can't really explain to you like that. I'm like, so is it too complex that you don't know how to explain to me? Or you're
Yeah.
just making it complex so that way you feel good about yourself, And again,
Yeah.
if you have an employee like that, that's a red flag for me. If a problem can
Oh,
be
this is an
solved,
employee?
no, this is just in when I was in
Oh, okay.
PT
Okay.
school.
Okay. I
No,
was going to say, because if it was an employee saying it's too complex for you to understand, I'd be like,
no, but I had an employee who made things bigger than what they are. Problem that could be solved within 5 minutes. He
yeah.
would say, this is going to take me like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I just say, tell me why it would take you 3 hours. And I'm just listen to clue, like how many of this is objective and how many of this is all subjective. And if I hear more subjective stuff, I say, nope, this is not an issue with the problem we're dealing with. You're making this an
Yep.
issue. And for people who are listening to this, it's like, if you see that where employers are making problem bigger than what it is to the point that only they can solve, that's a red flag, because now you feel like you will be holding to that employees, and that's the person that you most likely need to part way with as soon as
Yeah.
possible and get someone in that can make things as simple as possible.
Yeah. Again,
right?
it goes back to having that system, that framework within which you operate.
Yeah.
Having clearly established criteria, expectations, responsibilities, etc. Because then you're able to hold them accountable to that system that you've created, which again, as a business owner, gives you confidence to know or identify, do I have the right person in this role for what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah. And to cap it off, right? When I have issue in the business and it's a system problem, I rarely lose sleep. When it's a people problem, that's when I lose the most sleep.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just normal, right? Because you have to have
which again goes back to why so many people want to just be system oriented and not worry about the people.
Yeah.
But again, you can't put good people in a broken system. Like that's going to keep you up at night, because ultimately it may seem like a people problem, but really it's a system problem.
Yep.
Because if you have the right system, it's going to help you identify the right person to put in that role. And once you get that right person in the role, then it's not a people problem anymore. You have the system and the people working together, but it all starts with clearly defining what that system needs to be so you can identify the right person for that role.
Yeah. So, dude, I love this. And if you have a good system, you have good people, you can get 1-3-1. If you have bad system, bad employees, you can get 1, 3, and 70,000, because they're not going to give you any more solution. They're actually going to give you more problems. So,
well, not only that, but you're always going to be stuck in the business solving people's problems.
Yep.
Like the goal as a business owner is to get out of the way and let good people solve the problems inside your business.
Yep.
But you can't do that if you don't have the systems in place that empower them and allow them to thrive at solving those problems.
Yeah. Well, listen, great podcast, guys. Again, if you're interested in working with us or hop on a call with Chestin and I, hit the link below, and then we'll be happy to just hop on. And then if you're interested in coming on a podcast, just let us know. We'd love to just help you solve some problem. Chestin,
that'd be
thank
great.
you, man.
It was fun last week with Greg.
Yeah, great episode again. We'll see you guys same time next week, 12 p.m. Wednesday.